Welcome to this video on the skeletal system. In this video, you will be learning about the major bones that are involved in movement, the structure and function of synovial joints, and the different actions that can be performed at these joints. This video will also contain several activities for you to do in your class that will hopefully enhance your learning and understanding of the skeletal system. So don't forget to take notes and ask questions. Let's get started.
The adult human skeleton is made up of 200 bones. Fortunately, we are only covering a portion of these today, so you don't have to worry about remembering them all. Starting from the top, we have the skull, which primarily serves to protect the brain, but also enables head and facial movements, such as moving our heads from side to side and moving our mouths when we talk. Moving down, we have the sternum, which is a flat bone in the middle of our chest. It connects to the ribs and allows them to move during breathing, so breathing in and breathing out, and other torso movements. The sternum also connects to the clavicle or the collarbone, which is a long bone that meets the scapula at the shoulder. Here I am pointing to the scapula, which is also called the shoulder blade, and it is a triangular flat bone that, along with the clavicle, allows for shoulder and arm movements. The upper arm consists of the humerus, which connects to the scapula at the shoulder. Coming down to the forearm, the humerus connects at the elbow to the radius and the ulna. The ulna is the inside bone, and the radius is the outside bone. These three are all long bones. The radius and the ulna connect to the carpals, so here, and the carpals are a set of short bones that connect to the metacarpals that are made up of the bones of a hand. Then, these connect to the phalanges, which are your fingers. These all allow different hand movements and wrist movements. So now if we turn around and start back at the top, we have the vertebral column or the spine, which runs along the base of the skull and down to the pelvis. The spine allows for various torso movements, such as bending back and bending forward and moving your torso around. A bit more about the spine. So we have the very top tip, which is called the coccyx, and then just above that is the sacrum, which connects the spine to the pelvis. Moving down, we have the ilium, also known as the hip bone, and it is a large flat bone and the upmost part of the pelvis, and these bones allow for various different hip movements. So moving to the legs, we have the femur, or the thigh bone, which is the largest bone in the body, and it connects to the pelvis, creating the hip joint. So at the knee, the femur connects to two lower leg bones. We have the tibia and the fibula, with the tibia being the larger inside bone and the fibula is the smaller outside bone. We finally have the foot, which starts with the tarsals that connect to the tibia and fibula at the ankle. We then have the metatarsals, which make up the main part of the foot, and then we have the phalanges, which are your toes. These are all important for basic movement of your feet, and that is all the major bones involved in movement.
Every bone in the human body, including the ones you've just learned about, can be classified into 4 different categories. Long bones are bones that are longer than they are wide, typically found in your limbs. Short bones are small, usually cube-shaped bones. Sesamoid bones are a special type of short bone, with the patella an example of one. Flat bones are thin, flattened, and usually curved bones. Finally, we have irregular bones, which are pretty much any bones that don't fit the other 3 categories due to their unusual and unique shapes. Hopefully you've been taking notes and paying attention, because it's time for your first activity. Now here's what you're going to do. As a class or in big groups, you're going to trace the outline of a group member onto a large piece of paper. Then you'll draw all the major bones you've just learned about in the correct location and then label them. Finally, you will color them according to their bone type. Remember to work as a group, so divide the workload and help each other out. And always ask your teacher for any help needed. Now pause the video here and you can begin. We hope you enjoyed that activity. Now we're moving on to joints. Joints are the locations where bones meet and connect to each other. The ones you'll need to know about are synovial joints. Synovial, also called freely movable joints, allow for the movement or articulation of bones, as well as providing stability. Without these joints, we would not have the same mobility or range of motion. Bones are connected to each other at synovial joints through ligaments that provide strength and support. The end of these bones are also covered with a layer of cartilage that helps absorb shock. All the space between the articulating bones is called the joint cavity. Within that space is synovial fluid, which is a thick fluid that adds further cushioning as well as lubrication for smoother movements. The joint cavity is lined by the synovial membrane, which secretes synovial fluid. All of these structures are held within the articular capsule, which holds the joint all together. Thus, we rely on these features to allow our joints to move more easily and more comfortably. Now we move on to the next activity, in which you will be learning about the 6 different types of synovial joints. You should each receive a worksheet containing information and diagrams about each type of joint, along with a bank of different bone articulations found in the body. By carefully reading the descriptions and examining the diagrams, you will match each bone articulation to the correct joint type. We recommend you try out different joint movements to help determine which is the correct type that allows for that kind of movement. There will be at least one answer for each joint type. This activity will help you better understand what allows and prevents certain movements. So off you go and good luck. Here are the correct answers for that activity. We hope you learned more about how your joints move and interact.
By this stage, you've learned about all the major bones, the different joint types and how they work. So now we're combining the two to show you the different actions you can perform at these joints. Flexion is the bending of a limb that decreases the angle of the joint, or brings the bones closer together. For example, in your arm, a bicep flexion. Extension is the opposite, where the angle of the joint increases or the bones move away from each other. For example, a leg extension. Abduction is the movement of a limb away from the body's midline. For example, leg abduction. Comparison to adduction, which is the movement of a body's limb towards the body's midline. For example, arm adduction. Circumduction is where the tip of a limb moves in a circle whilst the other end of the limb, creating the joint, doesn't move at all. For example, rotating your arm like this. It's not a very common movement in the body. In comparison to this, rotation is the turning of a bone around its own axis and can be seen in many different movements all around the body. For example, a shoulder rotation or a torso rotation. Supination and pronation are rotation movements specific to the forearm. Supination is rotating the palms so they are facing upwards, whereas pronation is rotating them so they're facing downwards. The final 2 actions we'll be showing you is dorsiflexion and plantarflexion, and these are specific to your feet. Dorsiflexion is bringing your foot closer to your shins or pointing your toes up. Plantarflexion is the opposite, moving your foot away from your shin so it is pointed down. I hope you got all those because you'll need them for your next activity.
For our final activity, you are going to be analyzing and breaking down different movements seen in sports and other physical activities. In small groups, you will choose a specific movement or action to analyze. You will need to identify all the major bones involved and possible joint types, as well as the joint actions that create that movement. You will then present your findings to your class, demonstrating the movement and explaining its different components. Select one of the movements shown here to begin. That concludes the last activity and our lesson on the skeletal system. In this video, we introduce you to the major bones involved in movement, the structure and function of synovial joints, and the different actions we are able to perform at these joints. We hope you enjoyed all the activities and learned more about the skeletal system and how it functions. Until next time, thanks for watching.